Someone once said that even a small axe, if wielded repeatedly, can bring down a mighty tree, and consistent drops of water over time can carve a hole into solid rock. So keep on knocking and the door shall be opened. Ivriel Solbren keeps knocking on her father's room door, but no voice comes from inside. She is frustrated, thinking that if she were a little older and taller, she would easily reach the door handle. She finds it annoying that of all the ages she could have gone back in time, it had to be this one. Gently, she asks her father if he can hear her and pleads for him to open the door. Internally, she reassures herself not to be scared, believing her father just needs to get up from the hospital bed so she won't die. In a flashback, in the middle of the night, adult Ivriel is sleeping in her room. A man enters and wakes her up, calling her Princess Solbren. She wakes up and recognizes him as the crown prince of the Beloidan Empire, Tezzeret Caswither Walnarian. Tezzeret urgently tells her she has to leave the palace immediately. Confused, she asks what is happening, but he insists he will explain everything later and urges her to hurry. As they begin walking to leave the palace, Ivriel is puzzled and wonders why he is acting this way. She questions if he intends to harm her by drowning her in the fountain or locking her in a closet again. Suddenly, she realizes they are heading towards the Imperial Palace's chapel. Tezzeret tells Ivriel to listen carefully, as he will only say this once. There is a secret passageway under the pipe organ seat in the chapel. He instructs her not to turn any corners and to head straight through the passageway, emphasizing that this is the only way to leave the palace before dawn. Ivriel asks why she should flee the palace. Tezzeret warns her that she will die if she doesn't. Feeling chills, she asks if she will really die. He explains that 2 weeks ago, the eastern side tore open and the Duke of Solbren couldn't stop the surge of demonic beasts, leading to the corrosion of roughly half of the northern part. This information makes her even more nervous. Ivriel knows that corrosion refers to the influence of demonic beasts, creations of the evil god of darkness. If the chance to purify a land corrupted by darkness is missed, it will release miasma. The plants will die due to the miasma seeping into the soil, leaving herbivores with nothing to eat, which will then cause the carnivores to die, and finally, the people will perish. Ivriel, flustered, asks about her father's whereabouts. Tezzeret explains that they haven't been able to contact Duke Solbren for some time. Ivriel then inquires about backup and the troops stationed in the north. Tezzeret reveals that no troops were ever sent there because the imperial family plans to announce their decision to abandon the north. He adds that the emperor intends to punish the Solbren family for failing to protect the territory. Ivriel nervously believes that the corrosion is just an excuse and that the imperial family is likely using this incident to get rid of the Solbren family, who they see as a thorn in their side. When the current emperor ascended to the throne, a large-scale purge ensued, and Herwin Solbren was the only surviving member of the royal family. The reason Herwin escaped execution is clear. He is both a royal and a Solbren. The Solbren family, along with 3 other meritorious families, founded Beloidan alongside the first emperor and swore an oath in the name of Shia, known as the Oath of Protection. This oath decrees that the royal family cannot harm the 4 meritorious families, and those families cannot harm the bloodline of the imperial family. However, this oath can be broken if a family fails to fulfill its duties and mission as a vassal. The emperor would not miss such an opportunity to exploit this clause. Ivriel, still confused, struggles to understand the situation and asks why Tezzeret is helping her. He stops and she reminds him that he hates her. He looks at her and then looks away, admitting that he never did. As he opens the main door, Ivriel is stunned by his words and asks him to repeat what he just said. They step outside and Ivriel notices something unusual about the statue of goddess Shia, wondering if it had originally been smiling. Suddenly, a voice, dripping with sarcasm, remarks that they never imagined the two would come there to pray. Both Ivriel and Tezzeret are taken aback. The person, smirking, comments on the pleasant evening and addresses Ivriel as princess. Ivriel flinches and addresses the figure as Your Majesty. The emperor mocks her, calling her knave for blindly trusting and following whatever his son Tezzeret has told her. Tezzeret, protective of Ivriel, retorts angrily, questioning the emperor's right to call him his son and demanding he stop speaking nonsense to the princess. Enraged, Tezzeret yells at the emperor, threatening to rip out his tongue. The emperor, unfazed, remarks that it seems Tezzeret no longer enjoys playing with dolls. Using his shadow magic, the emperor grabs them both and they scream, trying to escape. The emperor draws his sword, stating that it has been 5 years since she came to the imperial palace. Tezzeret, frightened for Ivriel, shouts at the emperor, desperately pleading with him not to do whatever he is planning. Ignoring Tezzeret's protests, the emperor decides it's time to send her back to his brother. Trembling in fear and crying, Ivriel reflects that she doesn't want to die and hasn't done anything wrong to deserve this fate. The emperor addresses Ivriel, telling her she won't be lonely because her father, who left earlier, will be waiting for her. With a swift motion, he stabs her with his sword. Ivriel collapses to the floor, feeling faint and overwhelmed as her thoughts race, wondering if this is how she will meet her end. In her final moments, Ivriel cries out to Lady Shia, questioning why the goddess is smiling and if she feels any sorrow for her as she stands at death's door. She feels wronged and believes her situation is unfair. She wishes that her father, Duke Solgren, were stronger and more powerful, thinking that if he were, she wouldn't have to suffer in vain. Suddenly, she transforms into a child back in time and finds herself standing in front of her father, Duke Solgren. Seeing him alive fills her with disbelief, and she struggles to comprehend the moment, softly whispering, "Dad." The Duke scolds Ivriel for entering his room without permission, even though the door was open. Ivriel realizes that this moment feels familiar, as it resembles the vision she had before her death. Overcome with emotion, she begins to cry and questions if he is truly her father. The Duke flinches at her tears, concerned that he may have scolded her too harshly. He tries to understand what is happening, recalling how he has repeatedly warned her about entering his room. Ivriel cries out in anguish, expressing her fear of what she would do if he were to die. Seeing her distress, the Duke's surprise deepens as he calls her name. In a rush, Ivriel throws herself into her father's arms, hugging him tightly and tearfully proclaiming how much she misses him. The Duke rings the bell for a maid, maintaining a stern demeanor as he addresses Ivriel. He suggests that her frantic arrival might be due to trouble with her tutor, emphasizing that what she truly needs is guidance from the tutor, not him. Ivriel feels a sense of déjà vu, recognizing this sentiment from somewhere. The Duke informs her that Lady Tillian will be arriving at the castle soon and warns her about the consequences of being disrespectful. With tears in her eyes, Ivriel asks if it will be difficult to bring her tutor back. Internally, she reflects that she has heard Lady Tillian's name before. As she looks around the room, she notices the emblem of the snow deer of Solgren and realizes that she is in Solgren's castle, specifically in her father's room within the Duchy of Sorgren. A maid knocks on the Duke's room and he invites her in. She enters and addresses him, stating she is there to serve the lady. Ivriel, seeing the maid, is filled with disbelief, recognizing her as Lily. Memories flood back, reminding her that Lily returned to her hometown when she was 6, leaving her to question if this is truly the afterlife. The Duke instructs Lily to take Ivriel to her room, which shocks Ivriel further. Lily apologizes to the Duke, confirming her willingness to assist. Ivriel internally protests, realizing she still needs to check something important. Lily, determined, grabs Ivriel and insists on leaving, but Ivriel resists, clinging to her father. Despite her protests, Lily lifts her and begins to exit the room, telling the Duke that she will take her leave. In the hallway, Lily expresses her concern to Ivriel, asking how she could disappear while Lily was preparing her bath and mentioning her shock at finding her gone. Ivriel has no answer, and Lily continues, suggesting that Ivriel must have really disliked the idea of the tutor coming. She emphasizes that the tutor was hired by the Duke after much difficulty. Ivriel, feeling a strong sense of déjà vu, becomes certain she has experienced this before. As they enter Ivriel's room, Lily tries to reassure her, saying a good teacher will come for her. Ivriel notices a familiar doll and identifies it as Snowberry, a plushie Lily made for her 6th birthday, which shocks her further. Realizing something significant, she rushes to the mirror to see her reflection. Meanwhile, Lily, concerned, asks if she isn't going to take a bath. Ivriel, in disbelief, stares at her childlike reflection in the mirror. She trembles as she realizes she looks 6 years old and asks Lily to confirm it. Excitedly, Lily tells her that today is her birthday. Ivriel, shocked, asks Lily to repeat what she said and then screams in disbelief. Afterward, Lily assists Ivriel with her bath. During the bath, Lily notices a mark on Ivriel's chest and asks if she got hurt. Ivriel also notices the mark and strokes it, realizing that she didn't have a scar in that spot before. The scar's location makes her recall the moment when the Emperor stabbed her in the chest. Lily asks if Ivriel can remember how she got hurt, noting that the depth of the scar suggests it must have been quite painful. With pain in her voice, Ivriel agrees, reflecting internally on how much it hurt when she was cut by the Emperor's sword. She recalls the sinking feeling in her vision blurring, which had truly scared her. Out loud, Ivriel excuses herself by saying she's not sure how she got the scar. Internally, she thinks about how she wants to explain that she went back in time, but realizes that no one would believe her. Admitting that she died at the hands of the Emperor would likely result in accusations of blasphemy against the imperial family. After the bath, Lily tells Ivriel that she'll go get some towels. Left alone, Ivriel reflects on her situation, struggling to understand why she has returned to the past. She realizes that when she turned 14, Solgren will face a critical point. She wonders if this is an opportunity given by the goddess to change the future with her own hands. However, she also recognizes her current limitations as a 6-year-old, feeling powerless and vulnerable. Ivriel concludes that her best option is to help her father regain his authority and power. If he becomes stronger, the Emperor won't be able to harm him. Yet she acknowledges the significant problem. her father's frail health. She suspects that his poor health is the main reason Solbren lacks a proper support base, making their position even more precarious. Bevriel looks outside, observing the glowing boundary between the peaks of Mount Kima, known as the Barrier. She understands that the Barrier is not just a weather phenomenon. It is their only line of defense against the powerful monsters that inhabit the mountain and the sealed darkness. If the barrier fails to function properly, Solbren will suffer the consequences for being unable to fulfill its role as the barrier keeper. Ivriel suspects that the barrier's failure might have been part of the Emperor's plan all along. Determined not to stand by and watch everything fall apart, she resolves to take action. To prepare for the future and restore the Duke's authority, she realizes that curing her father's illness is crucial. From now on, her primary focus will be on restoring her father's health, no matter what it takes. Lily takes Ivriel to the dining table and asks her to take a seat. Ivriel flinches when she notices the plain meal before her, wondering if her father also eats such meager food every day. The chef, Alex, hesitates and apologizes for the modest spread, explaining that he tried his best. Ivriel, with a thumbs up and a smile, reassures him, praising the cake and expressing her gratitude, calling him the best. Alex is overwhelmed by her kindness. As Ivriel takes her seat, she realizes that the issue isn't the chef's lack of skill, but the poor financial situation leading to an inadequate food budget. Looking around, she notices webs and dust in the palace, further confirming the dire state of their finances. Lily encourages Ivriel to blow out the candle, and Ivriel responds with an "ah, okay," as Lily and Alex sing happy birthday to her. Ivriel feels happy in the moment, thinking she should just enjoy it for now, as she won't experience her 5th birthday again. Reflecting on the date, Ivriel realizes that her birthday is on October 27th, which means today must be Lobanco, October 27th of the year 147. She recalls that around this time she had entered the palace with her governess as per the Empire's policy. Ivriel recalled her father's insistence that the person she needed most wasn't him, but the tutor. In her mind, she thought her father was foolish for not realizing that the person she truly needed was him. This conviction fueled her determination not to allow the governess into the castle. Turning to Lily with a smile, Ivriel confirmed her role as her nanny, to which Lily nodded affirmatively. Ivriel then playfully trapped Lily into a promise, insisting that Lily would always be on her side. Lily assured her that she would. Ivriel pressed further, asking if Lily would accept any requests she made. Lily affirmed that she could ask anything, and Ivriel smirked, confident in her hold over the situation. The Duke was resting in his room, unable to sleep due to his poor health. He felt the pressing need to call for the doctor, and was about to ring the bell when a piece of cloth suddenly covered his mouth. Confused, he wondered what was happening, only to see Ivriel cheerfully greeting him with a "Good morning, Daddy." Seeing her, the Duke initially believed he was experiencing a strange dream. Ivriel, however, questioned him, asking if he truly thought he was dreaming. Surprised, the Duke sat up in bed, recognizing her. With a smile, Ivriel held a bowl of water, brightening the atmosphere despite the circumstances. The Duke, surprised, asked Ivriel how she managed to get into his room. Ivriel smiled and explained that she thought he had a fever. Confused, the Duke wondered how she got there in the first place. It was then that he noticed Lily outside and called out to her, confirming her presence. Lily, with a trembling voice, responded affirmatively. The Duke invited her in, and she entered nervously, wishing him good morning. He then questioned Lily about whether she had opened the door for Ivriel. Flustered, Lily insisted that she hadn't opened it personally. When the Duke pressed for clarification, Lily admitted that she had lifted Ivriel up so she could reach the door. Earlier, Ivriel insisted to Lily that she needed to go inside, reminding her of a promise. Lily hesitated, but Ivriel's sadness made her say that if she didn't get to see her dad today, she wouldn't eat. Worried, Lily pleaded with her not to say something so scary. In the present, the Duke firmly ordered Lily to take Ivriel outside, throwing a towel aside and telling her to get rid of it as well. Ivriel, shocked and trembling, protested that they couldn't dispose of it since he still had a fever. The Duke reminded her that he had told her the day before that even if his room's door was open, she still couldn't enter. Ivriel lamented that she couldn't go inside, but the Duke reiterated that she couldn't keep doing this. He instructed Lily to hurry and take Ivriel outside, to which Lily complied. Lily took Ivriel's hand and began to leave the room, but Ivriel resisted, calling out for her father and pleading for just a moment. The Duke reflected on how strange it was that Ivriel, usually not one to whine, seemed to grasp the situation now after being told twice. In the afternoon, Ivriel returned to her father with a bright smile, greeting him cheerfully and presenting her doll, Snowberry. The Duke's expression was not pleased, but Ivriel laughed nonetheless. When he inquired about the doll, she explained that it was made by Lily to keep her warm in the cold room. She added that she filled it with prayers for his recovery, insisting that he needed to have it next to him while he slept. The Duke turned his attention to Lily, calling her name, while she internally marveled at the sight of an adult holding a doll. The Duke asked Lily to please take Ivriel and the doll, Snowberry out of the room. Ivriel, shocked, exclaimed that she had something important she wanted to discuss. The Duke, however, indicated that if it was about a tutor, they could talk later, reiterating that she was not allowed to enter his room recklessly. Ivriel urged her father, insisting that if she didn't speak up now, she would have no chance to see him. Lily tried to hold Ivriel, but she clung tightly to the bed. Despite Lily's pleas for her to let go, Ivriel continued to call out to her dad, requesting just a moment of his attention. Eventually, she loosened her grip on the bed. Lily led Ivriel out of the Duke's room, where Ivriel was crying. Once in her own room, she expressed her disappointment, feeling that while she had expected a stern reaction from her father, it was still hard to bear. Lily tried to comfort her, urging her not to be upset. Ivriel clutched a pillow tightly, revealing her deep concern for her dad. Initially, she had gone to visit him with the intention of discussing a tutor, but upon seeing her father lying in bed, words had failed her. Sadness filled her thoughts as she reflected on how lonely he must feel in a room devoid of light. This realization fueled her desire to stay by his side to alleviate his loneliness. Frustrated, Ivriel struck the pillow in her distress. Ivriel realized she couldn't continue like this and wondered if there was a better solution. Suddenly, an idea struck her, and she urgently informed Lily that she needed to go somewhere right away. Lily was taken aback, questioning where she intended to go at that moment. With a smirk, Ivriel made her way to meet Herwin's doctor, Evan Chrysler. Upon seeing her, Evan inquired about her presence, concerned if she was feeling unwell. Ivriel thought to herself that if she wanted to start caring for her father, it was essential to learn more about his illness. She quickly clarified that she wasn't sick. Evan playfully suggested that Ivriel must have come because she missed him, which only irritated her further. She thought to herself that while he wasn't a quack in the strictest sense, holding a legitimate doctor's license, his skills were overshadowed by his unprofessional behavior. Ivriel recalled how numerous staff members had been driven to tears and left the castle after falling for his flirtations. Ivriel expressed her curiosity about the pharmacy and asked Evan if she could take a look around. Evan hesitated slightly but allowed her, noting there might not be anything interesting for her there. Ivriel thanked him and began exploring, noticing the materials on Evan's table and realizing they were used to make her father's medicine. Evan confirmed this, mentioning the 3-minute preparation time for each batch. Ivriel acknowledged his explanation with a neutral response. When Evan asked if she found it fun, Ivriel remarked that there were many complicated words and a strange smell emanating from the plants. Ivriel attempted to manipulate Evan by asking about her father's illness, showing a keen interest in the matter. However, Evan responded seriously, expressing surprise at her sudden curiosity regarding the Duke's condition and questioning her motivation for asking. Ivriel explained to Evan that she wanted to know about her father's illness because she hoped to find a cure for it. She knew that not much was known about Herwin's disease, and that only even the doctor and the Duke's aide were aware of the truth. This secrecy was meant to protect the people in the duchy. Evan then explained that the Duke was afflicted with an illness that gradually weakened his lungs, making it harder for him to recover from even small illnesses. Saddened by this, Ivriel asked if eating well, sleeping well, and exercising could help improve her father's health. Evan got up from his seat, knelt before Ivriel, and consoled her, assuring her that it would be beneficial for the Duke to go on walks with her when the weather was nice. Ivriel felt happy and smiled, asking if that would really be okay. Evan reassured her, emphasizing that her sincerity would definitely help. Internally, he acknowledged that the Duke's condition was beyond his ability to improve significantly, and the only hope was for Ivriel to manage it well. Overwhelmed with relief, Ivriel scurried to Evan and hugged him happily, expressing her gratitude and feeling less worried. Evan patted her back to comfort her, while Lily internally noted that it was a relief to see Ivriel feeling better and praised Evan for his efforts. Despite Evan's reassurances, Ivriel dismissed his words as nonsense. She believed her father had scenic disease, an incurable illness of unknown origin that progressively deteriorates cardiopulmonary function. Initially, it causes breathing difficulties, which worsen over time, leading to limited movement, frequent seizures, and eventually death. However, Ivriel was convinced that even a frightening disease like this had a cure, even if it was not known at the moment. She remembered that when she turned 13, a method to slow the progression of scenic disease was announced by the regime, increasing daily sunlight exposure. At the time, everyone thought it was absurd that such a simple measure could prevent the disease's progression. However, the announcement was true, and a year later, a treatment was developed. She knew her father was currently suffering from an illness that was slowly weakening his lungs. Ivriel reflected on the symptoms Evan had mentioned, noting how they aligned with the progressive weakening of the lungs. The medicinal herbs in the pharmacy further confirmed her suspicions. They were using sleeping pills and painkillers to alleviate the pain caused by scenic disease. She marveled at the unexpected usefulness of her herbal medicine studies from the Imperial Library. In her previous life, she hadn't approached her father even after the cure was discovered, mistakenly believing he would reject her again. Determined not to repeat that mistake, she resolved to save him this time without hesitation. Her primary objective was to slow the progression of his disease, which meant she needed to address the state of his raccoon den-like room. She pondered on how she could convince him to make the necessary changes. When Ivriel entered her room, the sunlight streaming and gave her an idea. Lily, attempting to comfort her, reassured Ivriel not to worry, promising that the Duke would get better. However, Ivriel ignored Lily's sympathy and called out to her with newfound determination. Lily, startled, responded eagerly. Ivriel then mentioned a saying she heard somewhere that getting forgiveness is easier than getting permission. Lily, not understanding Ivriel's intentions, repeated the word forgiveness in confusion. The next day, Ivriel and Lily returned to the Duke's room. Standing outside, Lily was shocked and nervous when she learned about Ivriel's plan. Ivriel, brimming with confidence, declared her intention to take down the curtains in the Duke's room, explaining that a person needs sunlight to be healthy. Lily, still nervous, expressed her concern about the possibility of Ivriel being kicked out again. However, Ivriel, having thought it through, was certain that she would be kicked out regardless of what she did. Lily lifted Ivriel so she could reach the door handle and open it. Ivriel, trying to stay positive, reassured Lily that she would be the one getting kicked out, not her. However, to Ivriel's shock, the door handle wouldn't budge, leaving her confused about why they couldn't enter. Lily speculated that the door was locked, and Ivriel's disbelief quickly turned into frustration. In a loud outburst, she vented her anger at her father, expressing how hard she had tried to care for him and how petty it felt for him to lock her out. She lamented that he must have known she would come to visit, calling him stupid and bad for doing so. Inside the room, the Duke overheard Ivriel's outburst. He couldn't comprehend her stubborn behavior, noting that she had never been one to resist this strongly, especially regarding a tutor. He questioned whether he needed to continue being so forceful. Suddenly, he felt a surge of pain and vomited blood, which heightened his worry about his worsening symptoms. Deep down, he knew it was best to keep his distance from Ivriel, fearing that her presence could put her in danger. Lily attempted to calm Ivriel, addressing her as my lady. Ivriel's sadness deepened as she wondered aloud why her father had locked the door and questioned if he was angry with her. Despite her father's occasional scolding, she knew he never truly got angry. Suddenly, she became alarmed, suspecting that his symptoms had worsened suddenly. With a teary and shaky voice, she called out to her father, hoping for a response, but there was none. Lily gently suggested that the Duke was resting and encouraged Ivriel to return to her room, promising to bring her some tasty treats. Ivriel refused, insisting that she would stay by her father's door, declaring loudly that snacks were unimportant compared to her father's well-being. Suddenly, the door to the room swung open, filling Ivriel with hope that her father had opened it. With tearful eyes, she exclaimed, "Dad!" However, to her surprise, it wasn't her father who stood there. Instead, someone else greeted her with a polite, "Good afternoon, my lady." Ivriel recognized the man standing at the door as Kian. Kian Rasher was the individual who had taken over the position of the Duke's aide, replacing the Mayer family, which had served the Duke's family for generations. As expected of an aide, Kian was a capable man, entrusted with overseeing the entire state affairs on behalf of Ivriel's ailing father. Ivriel greeted him, noting it had been a long time since they last saw each other, to which Kian replied that it hadn't been that long since she left. Internally, Ivriel wished he would let it slide so she could enter her father's room. Kian informed Ivriel that the Duke needed to rest and suggested she return, acknowledging her intent to see him but emphasizing that today was not a good time. Ivriel pleaded with Kian, expressing that she had something important to discuss with her father, but Kian explained that he had purposely locked the door to ensure the Duke could rest better, as he hadn't been sleeping well lately. Worried, Ivriel peeked inside the room and reflected on her father's worsening condition. Kian reiterated the need for the Duke to rest. Ivriel then inquired if she could meet her father at dinner, but Kian was unsure. He excused himself, went inside, and locked the door. Lily was stunned and stared at Ivriel. Ivriel questioned why Lily was looking at her like that, to which Lily replied that it was her first time seeing Ivriel and Kian talk for an extended period since Ivriel would normally be scared of him. Surprised and nervous, Ivriel asked if she had really been like that, and Lily confirmed it. Ivriel made an excuse, saying she didn't quite remember. Internally, she reflected on Kian's background. Kian belonged to another race with the appearance of humans but with animal blood flowing through their veins, commonly known as monsters. Kian had wolf blood, and his gray hair was a representative feature of the wolves. This perhaps instinctually caused ordinary people to feel a slight tinge of fear when facing creatures of his race. Ivriel wondered if she had also been scared of Kian before she went back in time, but now her fear was more directed towards Emperor. She caught a glimpse of the Emperor who had killed her, and the memory filled her with fear, making her tremble. She shook her head to stop thinking about it, refocusing on the present. Determined, she reminded herself that Lady Tillian would arrive at the castle tomorrow, and she could no longer rely on her father for help. She resolved to handle things on her own, silently apologizing to her father for what she was about to do, feeling she had no other choice. With newfound confidence, Ivriel told Lily they should return to her room. Lily, slightly taken aback, hurried to catch up with her. Meanwhile, Kian, who had been eavesdropping on Ivriel's steps, informed the Duke that Ivriel had left. The Duke acknowledged this, and Kian, following the Duke's order, refrained from telling Ivriel any details. Kian then inquired if the Duke planned to meet Ivriel during dinner. The Duke firmly responded that he would not, and instructed Kian to send Ivriel back if she came. Additionally, the Duke ordered Kian not to report any matters concerning Ivriel to him for the time being, reflecting internally that he had been too lenient with her. The Duke mentioned that the tutor would arrive soon and that everything should be left to her. Kian agreed to follow the Duke's wishes. Next day, Lady Tillian Seymour was on her way to the castle in a carriage, reflecting on her journey. She recalled her comfortable life as the Empress's personal maid in the past, but everything changed when the Empress, who had become distraught after losing 2 daughters, began changing maids daily in a fit of madness. Tillian herself was caught up in the chaos and eventually dismissed. To make matters worse, Seymour County, where her family resided, was gripped by a severe famine. Overnight, their family faced imminent collapse. Despite their efforts to seek help from those around them, no one was willing to lend a hand. In the midst of this dire situation, someone extended their help to Tillian. That person suggested to Tillian the idea of giving a little girl as a gift to the Empress. Initially taken aback, Tillian processed the proposal, realizing that the deranged Empress would likely see any girl presented to her as a daughter. The suggestion was to find a perfect replacement to fulfill this need. Understanding that the Empress's madness stemmed from the loss of her daughters, Tillian considered the feasibility of the plan. She contemplated who would be suitable for this role, someone noble enough to enter the main palace without issues, ensuring that the girl could be presented before the disturbed Empress without complications. Tillian inquired if there was a suitable candidate for the plan. The person responded that the timing was ideal since Duke Solbrin was seeking a tutor for his daughter. They suggested that Tillian could teach the girl moderately and eventually present her to the Empress. In return, the person promised to assist the Seymour family during their difficult times. Tillian recalled Ivriel Solbrin, recognizing that although the girl had lost her royal name, she still possessed undeniable noble blood. However, Tillian hesitated, concerned about the potential repercussions of targeting Ivriel, fearing the wrath of His Majesty. The person reassured her that this was actually something the Emperor desired as well. Tillian arrived at the castle, her thoughts focused on her mission. She speculated that His Majesty likely aimed to take the princess as a hostage to exert control over the Solgren family. Determined to fulfill her objective, she resolved to bring the princess to the imperial palace without fail. Meanwhile, Ivriel and Lily waited outside, eager to welcome Tillian as she approached. 20 minutes earlier, Ivriel looked through the window and spotted Tillian's carriage arriving. She realized that the person who would take her to the palace and present her to the Empress had finally come. In Beloiten, once noble children began to walk, they typically hired a resident tutor for their basic education. Although Solbrin had posted job openings several times, the family's weakened status due to a sick and powerless head had led to a perception of it as a fallen house, causing reputable tutors to avoid establishing connections with them. As a result, despite being 4 years old, Ivriel had not been able to hire a tutor, leading to growing concerns among the vassals. Lady Tillian was the individual who appeared during this critical time. Tillian greeted Ivriel with a curtsy, expressing that she was honored to meet her. She introduced herself as Tillian from Count Seymour's house, indicating she would be responsible for Ivriel's education from that day forward. Ivriel observed Tillian, noting her continued elegance and confidence. She reflected on how she had always admired these traits, which were notably absent in her ailing father before she regressed in time. During that period, her father's health deteriorated further, and Lily had to return to the west, leaving Lady Tillian essentially as Ivriel's sole guardian. At the age of 9, Ivriel was surprised to hear about the regime. Tillian seized the opportunity to manipulate her, explaining that to navigate the social world, Ivriel needed a better education in a more favorable environment. She suggested that by going to the regime, Ivriel would have access to competent doctors who could potentially find a cure for the Duke's illness. Influenced by Tillian's words, Ivriel began to believe in the possibility that this path might help her father. Duke agreed with Ivriel's decision to go with Tillian, believing it would provide her with valuable opportunities to learn and grow. He saw it as a positive step for her future development, encouraging her to return once she had matured. Despite feeling frustrated initially at possibly falling short in her father's eyes, Ivriel resolved to think positively about the journey ahead. As she accompanied Tillian, she focused on the possibility of encountering competent doctors who could help find a cure for her father's illness. Her determination was fueled by the hope of returning to Solbrin one day, stronger and capable of aiding her father's recovery. Ivriel initially felt reassured with Lady Tillian by her side, believing that everything would go smoothly. However, upon arriving, she quickly noticed a drastic change in Tillion's demeanor. Instead of the supportive figure she expected, Tillion harshly criticized Ivriel for her struggles, implying that her inadequacies would disappoint the Duke. As a child, Ivriel accepted these words as truth and dedicated herself to mastering Tillion's lessons, thinking it would be beneficial for both herself and her father. Unfortunately, by the time she recognized Tillion's ulterior motives, it was already too late to alter her situation. When Ivriel turned 10, Tillion brought her before the Empress, whose sanity had been shattered by the loss of her daughters. The Empress, in her madness, would alternate between calling Ivriel by the names of her deceased princesses. Reflecting on this experience, Ivriel found it terrifying no matter how much she thought back on those distressing moments. Ivriel curtsied politely, expressing her gratitude to Lady Tillion for coming all this way and honoring her with the opportunity to learn. Tillion was taken aback, having expected Ivriel to be thoughtless, but she was surprised by the girl's demeanor. Meanwhile, Ivriel was secretly implementing her own plan, reflecting on how Tillion would never suspect that she was using the etiquette she had been taught. With the feigned excitement, Ivriel urged Tillion to start their lessons immediately, leaving Tillion in shock at the sudden eagerness to begin that very day. Ivriel pondered the situation deeply, finding it strange that someone of Lady Tillion's noble status would choose her, a mere commoner from the distant north. She concluded that it was due to the Empress's loneliness, though she recognized the true reason was that she was a hostage meant to keep Solgren in check. This realization led her to understand that everything was part of the Emperor's plan. In a teasing tone, Ivriel asked Tillion if she perhaps didn't want to start their lessons. Tillion, feeling uneasy, quickly insisted that they should begin right away, expressing her happiness at the chance to teach someone as passionate as Ivriel. Confidently, Tillion remarked that Ivriel probably hadn't learned anything yet and that she would need to start with the basics. In class, Ivriel confidently declared that she could do everything they were discussing. Tillion, shocked, asked if Ivriel had actually learned how to write and basic manners. Ivriel responded with an enthusiastic yes. This prompted Tillion to hurriedly rummage through her bag, wondering what was happening as she was certain Ivriel had never had a tutor before. Teasingly, Ivriel asked when they would start the lesson, expressing her excitement. This annoyed Tillion, who decided it was time to move on to something more advanced. With a smirk, she asked Ivriel if she knew the difference between the Shia calendar and the Labancal calendar. Internally, Tillion thought to herself how cheeky Ivriel was and felt the urge to push her further. In a state of shock, Ivriel confidently explained that the Shia calendar is based on the lunar cycle of the moon, while the Labancal calendar follows the solar cycle. Tillion, now nervous, admitted Ivriel's explanation was correct and couldn't comprehend how Ivriel knew such details. Attempting to challenge Ivriel further, Tillion asked about the abolition of slavery in the year Labancal 89. Without hesitation, Ivriel answered that it was due to a peace treaty announced by the Church in Shia 1767. Tillion, utterly perplexed, exclaimed in disbelief, wondering aloud how Ivriel knew all of this information. But Ivriel laughed mischievously and playfully poked Tillion, exclaiming how much fun she was having. She then turned the tables and asked Tillion a question. What was the shape of the Guardian Cross observed by the Promera meteor group? Caught off guard, Tillion stammered, asking Ivriel to repeat the question. Ivriel quickly declared that time was up and stated the answer was a regular cross. Ivriel continued to tease Tillion, suggesting it was odd for a teacher not to know less than her student, especially since Tillion was supposed to be a teacher.